Hey guys, just wanted to do a tips and tricks video for you. I've spent maybe like 300 hours in Satisfactory, and there's a few things that are not immediately obvious when you're playing the game, especially with all of the changes done in 1.0. So to start with, I thought I'd just go over some of the basic stuff that you might already know, or maybe you don't know, and it will help you in the future. But the first one is the world grid. So you might be placing foundations randomly all over the world, but sometimes you want to connect them together, and when you do that, the foundations don't align. So if you hold down Control, it snaps to the world grid like that. And when you hold down Control and place a foundation to the world grid, you know that wherever else in the world that you place it down, it's going to align with the other one if you want to connect them together. So if you place it down, you can do that, and then you just keep adding them on, and then when you join them together, they'll align. So if I come over here, see if I place this one down, it's not quite lined up, but if I hit Control, it snaps, and then if I put that one, it aligns. It's not at the same height, but that's easily solvable if you just create ramps. But otherwise, that's the world grid option that makes it a lot easier to align different platforms together. There's also different build modes, which you probably just saw. So there's the standard default mode, which is just you target and you place it down like that. But if you push R, which is the default key binding, you get the zoop mode, and then you click once and then drag, and then you can go up to 10 foundations in whatever direction you want, and then put that down. And then that makes it a lot easier to build en masse. And in my opinion, even if you have like a foundation, a blueprint, like a 6x6 foundation, and you place them down, sometimes it can be a little bit finicky trying to like line up the blueprints together. And I think it's actually faster to just zoop build everything. But I mean, it's personal preference really. The next thing is some of the changes that came with 1.0 is the direction of the alignments when you're placing down buildings. So let's say I put down a constructor and I want to put down another one. You can also hold Control when placing down buildings to snap as well. So right here you can see there's a little blue line that aligns with the one next to it, but if I'm out a little bit and I hit Control, it snaps to the alignment. And then if you go closer to it and then try to go over it, it won't let you. So holding down Control makes it easier to just snap, and easily align buildings together. So that's a really, really useful thing to use. And then if I have, for example, a smelter and I put it down, you can see in 1.0 they've added those directional lines there, and that just shows where it's going to be going. I'll just extend this a little bit. So you can see it's going in that direction, and then if I also add down a merger or a splitter, you can see that it's going to the right there, but if I rotate it, I can now see that it's going into the splitter and out to that one there. And then if I put like another one down over here, I align it, but that one in the middle is not gonna have any direction to it. So if I rotate, I can correct it, and I can see the direction is going into that splitter, into that machine. So those little guidelines make it a lot easier to determine where the direction of the belts are when you're connecting them up. Because sometimes you put it down, or previously when you put it down, you had no idea of which way it was facing unless you really paid attention. One other thing that they added in 1.0 is the different build modes for pipes for belts. So when you usually try to connect it like this, it goes straight, but if you push R, it'll move it to the straight build mode, and it gives you that perfect right angle, 90-degree angle, and you can make it a lot more cleaner, a lot more easily when making your builds. There's also some ones that I've previously talked about in other videos, which is the the power towers. And where these really come into play is where you use the zip line. So the zip line makes it really easy to be able to traverse the map when you place them down, because for the main reason, when you attach yourself to a zip line and you go across them, you see that little nodule here. I can go across it without jumping off, and it just connects to the next one. Whereas previously, if you put down like one like this, let's just go down here, and if you're on one like this and you hit a pole, you get bumped off, which is a little bit annoying. But at least with power towers now, it makes it a lot easier to traverse. If you push shift while going on these, it goes a lot faster. So sprinting on the ground and sprinting on the cable both increase your speed. And I've found that previously I was this whole playthrough I was just like holding down the sprint button, and I was getting like a really sore pinky because I was using my pinky on the shift. But someone told me in the comments, actually, if you go into options and you go to controls, is it controls? Yeah, controls. Hold to sprint. If you untick that, then you don't have to hold down shift to sprint. You just push it once and it'll stay on. So the same goes for when you're on a line like this. I push shift once and the speed is going to increase a lot, and I don't have to push anything. And then if I've got a really long distance to go on these power towers, it's just going to take me there automatically at the sprint speed. So that's a really cool thing to get to where you want to go. So the next one is how to spend your Mercer Spheres. So with the Mercer Spheres, you first want to unlock the first node here by finding a Mercer Sphere, and then you unlock the dimensional depot. And so that's like 2 Mercer Spheres at the start, and then obviously you're gonna want to unlock that SAM fluctuator as well, which comes down from finding the SAM ore, and then just coming down the tree here and unlocking it here. So once you have the SAM fluctuator and you've found 2 Mercer Spheres, you can unlock that dimensional depot. But then it becomes a question of, should I spend my Mercer Spheres on more dimensional uploaders, or should I spend them on upgrades to the dimensional uploader? And I think that at the start, definitely you should be making the dimensional depots for things like, let's say, concrete and iron plates. So these ones I would do first, concrete and iron plates, because it makes it easy to build foundations and not have to keep coming back. Or if you have the recipe for building foundations with just concrete, then you can just do concrete and not iron plates, but I would still do both. Because I would also want to do things for what's required for power poles and the power cables. So that means you need wire, you need concrete, and you need rods. So the first things I would focus on from the Mercer Sphere once you upload the dimensional uploader is do iron plates, concrete, the poles and the wire and the cable, so that's 5. So that when you're out in the world and you're building foundations and power poles to try to get to resources, you're never running out of resources. And once you get to that point, you really want to just focus on expanding the upload and the stack size of your resources going into the dimensional uploader. So you can see here, this first one only requires 3 Mercer Spheres, and you get a 50% upload speed. And the next one is 25 upload speed at 7 Mercer Spheres. And so the rewards are diminishing and the cost is exponential. So this one you only get 12.5 and it's 13, and then 6.25 and it costs 23. So in my opinion, you should probably focus on getting the upload speed 50% first, then increase the stack size once and twice, and then go to the 25%. And then the other ones, I wouldn't worry until the late game, because there's also the enable upload from inventory, which I unlocked, but I've never once used it. You might want to use it. It's up to you if you want to use it or not, but I haven't really found that much of a use case for it. But once you have those upgrades, that's when you focus on expanding all of your resources to have a dimensional uploader each. So you can see my mall here has got a dimensional uploader for everything. Well, almost everything. And it just makes it so much easier when you're going out and building things out in the world for power plants and things like that. And the other one is the Somersloop. So under the same tree, make sure you unlock the scan for Somersloop, and that one will just come with the SAM fluctuator. And then make sure you find one to unlock the production amplifier, because once you get into that mid game and you unlock things like the circuit boards and you can start using it, it is just so helpful, especially with like elevator parts, to have those Somersloops at the end of a production chain. So let's say, for example, you want to just ignore any spaghetti you might see along the way here, but let's say you want to expand your computers. So computers is quite a complex setup, and you might come to it and you might say, oh damn, I want to increase my computer output, and I could put some power shards in it, but if I do that, then I have to increase my plastic and my cable and my circuit board, and then circuit board requires plastic as well, so I have to get heaps more plastic. And the time it takes to extend that production, you can go out into the world and find 4 Somersloops and put them in a machine like this, and then you've doubled your output of that certain thing. And when you get to like the late game and you want to make those really expensive elevator parts, and you have these 4 Somersloops like being created in these machines, it saves on so many resources and it saves so much time. So I would suggest, when you really want those really complex parts to be expanded, it's actually more time efficient to go out into the world and find Somersloops instead of coming back to and you're spending time in your base setting up another production chain. So keep that in mind for when you want to increase your production. When you're out in the world and you're exploring and looking for things like Mercer Spheres or Somersloops, it's really good to use the object scanner to find them. And once you unlock the hover pack, it makes it really easy to find anything really. Mercer Spheres, Somersloops, slugs, hard drives, because whenever you're close to a power pole, you're going to get this hovering ability. And if, like before, like I mentioned, if you've set up dimensional depots for the parts that are involved with cables and power poles, you're never going to run out of resources. You can go across the map forever just by creating power lines and being on your hover pack. So you can go forever to anywhere and never have to go back to get more resources. And the great thing about having the hover pack while traveling around and finding Mercer Spheres is that you're out of range of a lot of enemies. I mean, obviously there's ranged ones that shoot stuff at you, but for the most part it's okay. And then when you use your object scanner, you just fly around, and is it in there? Oh yeah, it's in there. This guy might give me some trouble, but yeah, I can come down and collect the Mercer Sphere. Okay, I'm getting hurt. Come on. Okay, so some situations might be a bit scuffed, but for the most part you can just fly around and just collect whatever you need to collect. And you can see, like, I've got the toggle for like sprint on, so the movement is actually relatively quick. So I can just keep traveling around like this and keep finding and switching over, and oh, no Mercer Spheres in range. Oh, there's a Somersloop somewhere, and it's in this direction. So let's go down here and see if we can find the Somersloop that it's talking about. And hopefully we don't come across an enemy that's going to shoot the shit out of us. Let me just check the direction. Where is it? There. and sometimes it's like really up high and it makes it really easy to get. So there you see, heaps easier to collect. And then we just keep going around. There's a slug under there that if I wanted to get there I would get that, but I don't need to. And then you just keep exploring around, and oh, look at that, there's another Mercer Sphere right there. And there's no, oh, there's an alpha. Let's make it quick. Oh, okay, no problem. He fires a rock at me, but I got it before he did that. But yeah, that makes it, this whole process makes it heaps easier to find any objects that you need to. Another tip is with the fluid system and how it works in Satisfactory. So my general rule of thumb is I always pretty much use Mark 1 pipes that contain 300, let's say for oil, 300 in one pipe, and that goes into 5 refineries. And this is especially the formula that I use for fuel generation, because you need 60 per minute for the fuel, and 60 times 5 is 300. So previously I thought, well, what if I use a Mark II belt and that has 600 capability inside of it? Then I can have a Mark II into 10 refineries. But I've found that if you expand too many refineries on one pipe, even though you have 610 refineries, some of them are not going to operate very effectively because of backflow issues in the fluid system. So you can pipe like a Mark II belt, but before you reach the refineries, you need to make sure you separate it out into 2 separate Mark Is that go into their own set of 5 refineries each. And that way they'll always make sure that they get the correct amount as they need it. So as a general rule, don't add too many machines on a single pipe, especially on a single Mark II pipe. This one might be a little bit of a hot take, but in my playthrough that I did for power, I didn't invest in nuclear power at all. It was just too much of a headache for logistics and production chains and dealing with waste and all of that stuff. I found it was much more simple and more stable to just invest in fuel type power, or coal at the start at least. So the actual best place that I've found for generating power in the entire game is this section down here, the blue lake. And what makes this really, really good is, at least at the start when you're processing oil, you can just put all of this oil into refineries and then into fuel generators. And with the changes in 1.0, they actually changed the power output from 150 to 250. So fuel generators are a lot better in 1.0, and it makes it much more simple and stable to set up power. But as you go through the different tiers and you unlock more things like turbo fuel, you need sulfur and you need coal in order to make compacted coal, which is needed to make turbo fuel. So there's a pure sulfur and a pure coal right next to each other here, and you can make a little setup here that makes that compacted coal, and you can just belt it right down here and make a little fuel generation power plant. And then even more after that, later in the game, when you unlock rocket fuel, you need nitric acid, and nitric acid is made from nitrogen gas, which is up here as well. So you can pipe that down, and it also requires water and iron, which is readily available, and you can pipe that down so that you can combine the nitric acid with the turbo fuel to make rocket fuel generators. And the ratio for rocket fuel on power generators is absolutely huge. Like, I made one production chain off one blender, and it makes about 100 and something per minute, and fuel generators only take about 4 per minute. And something's attacking me right now. But you can see it here. I've set it up. It's not quite finished. I want to make a second level, but just off of these oil patches here, I've made these fuel refineries that are making fuel, and they go into these turbo fuels refineries from the compacted coal that's coming in, and they go into blenders to make rocket fuel. And the rocket fuel, since it actually, like, if I was to put as many of these fuel generators to fit this amount of output, 138 per minute, I would need 33 fuel generators to be able to utilize all of that, which is huge. So in order to save space, every single one of these fuel generators has 3 power shards in it. So each generator is making 625 megawatts and is consuming 10.42 per minute. So you look at that number, 10.42, and this is outputting 138. So I've got a lot. It's a bit scuffed because of this thermal generator in the middle, but you can see how much, just from those nodes that I showed you on the map before, these are all getting all their oil from here and making turbo fuel and then into the rocket fuel, and I'm able to produce this many fuel generators and this much for each of them. And once I do a second level, it's going to be, at the moment it's like 45,000 megawatts, and once I do a second level it's going to be like 90,000 megawatts. And I'm actually doing a separate video on this at the moment, so keep tuned for that. But when you're doing any sort of power in the game, the best way to do it is to go out to an oil field and put fuel generators in it with the refineries feeding it, because you don't have to belt anything back to your base or do any logistical challenges like you have to do with nuclear power. So another good place that I've found on the map is this one up here. Actually, it's got this no, is that the one? This one over here. It's a crude oil, but it's the one with the nodes, and you need the extractor that pumps the ground, and then the nodes come up, and that will give you a ton of power just by extracting it, putting it into refineries, putting it into fuel generators. And you don't need to worry about waste. You don't need to worry about converting the waste into something else. It's just stable power that just sits there and runs, and you don't need to do any maintenance on it or store anything for it. So I highly recommend going down the fuel route throughout the game and not have to worry about any kind of nuclear power, at least until the very late game, when you can actually complete the cycle of the uranium waste into fixonium fuel rods. One thing they added in 1.0 is the hard drive library. So when you actually scan your hard drives now, it'll pop up in here, and as long as you don't select anything, they'll stay in here and they'll be ready for you to pick whatever option you want, or to rescan it for 2 more options whenever you want. But if you're really trying to find a particular recipe, if it's already in your library, it's not going to pop up again in the next hard drive that you research. So when it comes in, don't quickly select an option and get rid of it, because the other one that you didn't want is going to be back into the pool of options to pop up in the next one. So if you are looking for something, especially in the early game or mid game, around something like cast screws or solid steel, then just make sure the bad options that you don't want, you keep them in your library until you find the ones that you do want. And that makes it a lot easier to really hone in and get the ones that you want, and try to manipulate the RNG a little bit. One other small tip is, if you push N on your keyboard, you can search for anything in the game, for any info on how it's used or how it's made. So maybe I just want to look for computer, and then I click on that, and I can see, it needs these parts in order to create this, but it's also used to make all of these other parts. And another thing with that search box when you push N is you can do calculations in it. So let's say I want to make 6 of something that costs 60. I can do 60 star 6, and it's 360. So you can do calculations within the search bar. Just use star for times, and slash for divider by, and plus for addition, which is like, I feel like a hidden secret that no one really knows about, but it's there. In case you don't want to open up a separate calculator or use your phone or something, it's in the search bar. It makes it easy. And then there's also the codecs. If you push O, it's kind of the same kind of thing, where you can look for the different parts and see where they're used and how they're made and things like that. And there's a search at the top. So hopefully these tips helped you out, and hopefully it's provided you with something new. And please like and subscribe and leave a comment on this video, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks.